So to lightly speak on OpenAI, even though we focused the first part on this, their contribution was the thinking models. They transitioned from 4.5 to 5 now. They also released GPT OSS. You can use this model for your own local labs, hosting, or training. And it actually does pretty well compared to other models. Something I don't have access to, and I wish I did, was the Sora 2 models. So Sora, if everyone has been fooled or has seen videos of these wacky things like a cat stealing a fish from a grocery store and running out, that's all Sora, and there's actually a lot of IP issues that are going on because it's able to perfectly recreate characters, not only in the real world, but in things like media, anime, and output all of these. In fact, I think we should, in case people have not seen it, let's look at this, and so everyone can see exactly how realistic we're talking about. And it's actually pretty terrifying because you start to think what this could be used for.
One year ago, Sora 1 redefined what was possible with moving images.
This is all AI generated, by the way.
Announcing Sora, powered by the all-new Sora 2. It's the most powerful imagination engine ever built. And it's packed with new features. I'll pass it to Bill for more details.
So all this is fake, completely fake.
Every video.
So it makes you think about animation, production studios, maybe propaganda that could be spread.
Physics IQ and body mechanics, marking a giant leap forward in realism.
And if you compare this to early 2023 when we had Will Smith struggling to eat spaghetti, I'm not sure if everyone remembers that. I think this is pretty close to reality.
We're introducing Cameo, giving you the power to step into any world or scene, letting your friends cast you in theirs.
I think there's still like a weird gradient around some textures, but I mean, some filters people use cause more distortion than this, right?
It's also about creativity and joy.
Animation's like a big one. Multiple studios are filing lawsuits for this. So if you head to their website, yes, all this is AI generated. This one looks a little more AI generated, but something you will see in Hollywood. But like this, previously, I think the average anime cost anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000 to produce per episode. So having something like this can either, I would say, you could use it to your advantage, or it can break your industry completely. Anyways, enough about Sora. Yeah, so this is the Pro model. I think it's $200 a month to use it, and you get some type of limit. And then there is a enterprise license that virtually is almost like you can produce as much as you want. There is latency between them. It's not like it generates this right away, but it does produce these, like, say, in less than 2 minutes, each like 30-second clip. So yeah, it's concerning for multiple reasons. Anyways, let's head back More questions?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah.
Back to the slide on OpenAI and DeepSeek.
Yeah.
Stop sharing.
Yeah. I'm about to share the screen right now.
So I think there's like a lot of variation in what the word open access or, like open means,
Yeah.
like open stock. What are the different ways in which these models are open to the public?
Yeah. So let's go ahead and
Because open source is the most common word, but it still has different meanings.
yeah. So there's open source and there's open source and open weight. Open source and open weight means that you have all the stops. You also have some information about what data was being used on those stops or training cycles. You don't exactly, you're not exactly provided all the data that was used to train a model, but you are provided additional information about the weights. Something like a llama model, at least majority of them, before Meta 4, they were MIT licensees. DeepSeek, majority of their models are also MIT licensees, meaning that they're fair use. You can use them for your own labs, projects, research, whatever it might be. Then there's closed, which is all the cloud providers. You cannot download this. This is only being hosted by them, and you will continuously need to send your data to them and bring it back. Does that make sense?
So what is open source without open weight?
It's just open source.
So you can use it, you can download the model, you can on your own cluster or machine, but you cannot fine tune, the steps.
You can't see into the specific weights themselves. So you just get the end product.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. There's also benchmarks, and at the end of this section, we'll actually test multiple models and we'll compare them against each other. And we can go over industry benchmarks too on how these models are being scored. And next is Anthropic. So this is the model I use the most. I have a pro license. I mainly use this because I code on a daily basis, and it helps me iterate. It helps me catch bugs. I also have a lot of typos, right? So it corrects all of these for me. The philosophy behind Anthropic is to have alignment. So, and when it comes to alignment, they try to prioritize raw capability. They don't want to use contaminated data. They curate majority of things. I found that this is best for me as a programmer. It almost seems like they've catered this for programmers. And if we go on to the next slide, I'll quickly show how I use this. I know majority of people, yeah.
Before we go on, we do have a question back to the open source issue. Is that a good time for? So someone online said, are there any federated systems for data exchange where you don't have to share your data?
Yes and no. This is explained. There's a slide at the end of this during privacy. There are BAAs that you can have with companies. Say if you have a large enough user base, you can contact Anthropic, OpenAI, or Google. And you are able to have data use agreements where they won't train on your data. However, you still need to upload your data. Sometimes if you are a company and you have a partnership, they'll come install that model in a server or provide you with a server to run this model locally on your lab or a company, but they will not release the model itself because they don't want people to have the model and share it. Is there a follow-up question to that? I imagine there might be. Okay. So BAAs, they're a thing. And if you're a lab, or I think we have one, right? Here at U of M. We have a BAA with Google, and that's how we have access to some of the tools. They won't train on our data. They also will reject sensitive data, right? So we can't connect to specific tools. And I know Wall Street firms do have Anthropic agreements, and that's the model they're using for trading algorithms and things like that. So Claude and GitHub, one common thing that I constantly do is I need to go back to some code that I wrote a couple months ago and I don't know what's going on. I think majority of people that code feel that way. So something I like to do is I like to, let me share my screen.
There's a follow-up question. Sorry.
Yeah, I imagine there would be.
She says, models having. She said she also offered to ask like offline later if this is just too much for right now, but
So models that are limited in how many queries you could do.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, just it's in regard to limiting data exposure. Like,
No, I think those would be they would go under whatever agreement you have with a company. I've seen those agreements be variant. I've seen them go from we won't train on your data to we won't store your data. Those are two completely different things. It depends on the company and the type of data that you have. You also have to think that maybe some data they don't want to collect or train on because of liability. So depending on your use case, this will vary if you are speaking or negotiating with the company directly. And they could choose to email me or message me if they're at U of M.
sure.
Okay. So, like I was saying, sometimes I need to go back to some code and I don't know what's going on. So something helpful that I like to do is I like to connect to my GitHub. You can have a drop down to all of the GitHub repositories that you have. These are just on one account. Obviously, I have multiple. But for example, this is a project I have not touched in 8 months. It was just a quick demo on how to use a local Olama or Llama-based system for retrieval-augmented generation. And I can say something as simple as, oh, wrong tab. Haven't worked on this project in a long time. Can you tell me what I did? Not did wrong. And this will go through the full repository and understand the code base, the files. Took a little bit, but it says, yeah, looking at your project, you build a retrieval-augmented generation chatbot, and it correctly labels all of these things for me. These are the tools. It gives me the core functionality. And it does not get this from a README. If we go to my GitHub, it's an empty README, right? So it actually goes through all the files and is able to understand what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, which I find super helpful. So a follow-up question that I usually have is, to tell me about the architecture, how do systems interact, things like that. That's just because even though this project is simple, files often call back to each other. They're embedded, and there's usually a main file that controls everything, kind of like that GPT-5, right? So I'll ask how systems interact. This is not only helpful for your projects, but you can connect it to other repos if they're public to understand someone's code, if you want to refactor it, if you want to reuse it, or maybe contribute to repos, right? So here's the file structure. And then it actually is able to put out a system architecture data flow diagram. This makes it more comprehensive and split things up correctly. Config files, UI, sidebar and chat, analytics. And even though I'm using Sonnet 4.5, you could do this with the simplest Sonnet models going all the way back to Haiku. It's always been able to do this. And great thing about this is it gives you a leg up on having to learn a code base all over again or learning a new tool. It's also very good for documentation. So something even though I went to computer science school, I hate documentation. And I will do something like, can you provide a README for this? Please include the diagrams for. And you can do this inside the chat, but if you are programming, which I imagine if you're going to use this, you can connect it directly to your, say, VS Code, or you can use their inline tools to be able to generate or sometimes watch exactly what you're doing and document all the changes that you're doing in steps. I have some systems where they even will do my Git commits for me. So the commit message, they'll actually write down exactly what changes I've made before uploading. All I have to do is approve. Oh no, do we have an internet issue? Let me refresh this. Yeah. Okay, there we go. And everything it learned, it will just go ahead and document for me. If we were to have a part 3, we could actually code with this. People call it vibe coding, right? Basically tell it what you want it to do and it starts generating for you. And we could go into like deeper workflows. There's actually GitHub Actions. So if you do a merge or a pull, it could detect any possible issues, provide solutions to change lines of code to prevent any type of pitfalls in your code. As you can see, it provides me with a README. And you could say, okay, great. So let me go back over here. Commit these changes. You can automate this process too. So if you want to, in your coding, you can connect it. So whenever it generates new files or it rewrites something, debug something for you, it could just, like I said, push everything for you. And we could see the changes here. The one pitfall that you will have with the interface like this is that if you ask it, can you see my GitHub changes, it won't be able to see the new changes he just made, the ones I just committed. However, oh, internet connection again. However, all you need to do is resync it by just going here and updating it. Now, those of you who might be paying a little bit more attention see those percentage numbers and a 9% capacity at the bottom. So that's the context window that we talked about before. How much information can it specifically hold in a given chat? So we will be at 9%. This could be an iterative process, right? So likely you'll hit 100%, then you need to go to another chat. If you have a code base, maybe documentation, like I usually have Google Docs, do like listing out everything that I'm doing, and I'll have a GitHub repo on what I'm working on. You could actually create a project. So, and projects here, for example, if we go on this one, it has access to all the files that I've written. And you can additionally connect it to a GitHub repo. So then it's able to have persistence just like a custom GPT model would. Only this time we're talking about being a little bit more technical. We're talking about having access to a GitHub repo, documentation, possibly the steps we've done and what we are going to do next. If say I was to ask, what should I do next on this project? If you were to ask something like this, then it goes into that project, understand those external resources without using that percentage of the context window. So if you're like me and you are not the greatest at documentation, you're a little lazy. Sometimes you are forgetful because you have a couple of things going on. Creating the projects in Claude might be beneficial for you. And again, we have yeah, we have a connection issue again. Anyways, that's how you use Claude on the day-to-day basis. Apart from this, I'll use it in VS Code. You can connect it directly to your code base for simple debugging. Sometimes it could write files completely for you. And unlike before where you needed to copy and paste your code for ChatGPT, it can maintain persistence because you have it linked to your GitHub. Every time you make a push, it's aware of that. And it's able to then look at the changes and continue working with you. Think of it as a partner, not total replacement. But you should be able to get more done and debug. Now going back to this, any questions about Claude and how to use it? Are people still there? Yep.
Is there like a API key that you can copy, like in Claude or something?
Yeah, so when it comes to, have you seen GitHub Copilot?
Oh, so just use the
Yeah, so you can connect it to either that specific key, but there's also, and we won't go into that because it requires like maybe some system privileges and things like that. But there's Claude Code, and that's a command line tool that you can use for all of these processes. You can actually set up agents also to monitor your code or your screen, whatever it might be, and help you document. But this is all, I would say, requires you to know how to code a little bit, which is why like a part 3 of this would definitely just go directly into all those tools, right? Okay, so moving on from Anthropic, we have Meta or Facebook. So Meta, we use it in research. Multiple labs have used it to train their own models, to be able to perform some task either locally or sometimes on a server. They're great because they're lightweight and you can run them on something as simple as your iPhone or a Raspberry Pi. If you have a MacBook that has unified memory, you can actually take advantage of this running, I would say, decently sized, anywhere from 7B with 10 gigs of RAM, up to if you have 16 gigs of RAM, you should be able to run like a 14B model. Something that I do want to mention is that I would say the biggest contributor that Meta does have is they have a backend named Ollama. And Ollama is an efficient way to run not only their own models locally, but also any open source model. So if we go on their website, okay, and this is Ollama. This is their online website. You can go to models and you'll actually see not only their own models, but also GPT OSS that's provided by OpenAI. You can download Ollama on almost any device and run some type of model on it. They also have DeepSeek. They have Gemma, which is, I believe, Google's open source. They have Quen, which I think if we had to name a seventh competitor in the field, it would be Quen. And these are open for you just to click and run a command and download them. Now let's go back to the presentation.
I have a
Yep.
like for more context on these local models.
Yep.
I'm pretty much only used to this web interface, and so on these local models, like how are you interfacing it? Is there like a prompt that you're just typing? It's like just like a Linux prompt that you're typing into.
Yep.
Or
Yeah, so when you're interfacing with these local models, it would just be through terminal or command line. And you're only using your hardware resources. The great part about this is that you can't turn off your internet. So you know that your code, I mean, any of your data is not being shared, right? You can have these on enclave systems. We talked about we don't need the largest model to perform some task. So you could train very small models and just have these agents run locally to do whatever your bidding might be, right?
sure, that's great. No middlemen, just straight local. Awesome.
At home, that's what I do. I have multiple 1B to 7B models that I've trained, and they're responsible for a lot of my day-to-day tasks. Okay, next, we have Grok. So Grok has a free version and a paid version. It's also limited. Like I said, they just the only difference with them is that they're culture first, so they have less system prompts. It might say some outlandish things. It's been trained on Twitter data. What can you expect? Right. So if people are familiar with it, you can, or should I show? Do you guys want to see the interface for Grok? Yeah. Okay. Change window. This is the interface for Grok. And oh, surprise, it has an auto mode. So this is basically GPT-5. reroutes to whatever model. There's fast, expert. There's this beta version Grok for fast. There's also Super Grok. So Super Grok is their largest, most powerful model. It takes a while for responses. It can be very good at complex tasks, and it can be very bad at simple tasks. So it's almost like that person that overthinks, right? I no longer have the trial for it, but just be aware that I would say sticking to something like a Anthropic or perhaps a Google, 2.5 that we'll cover next, it's probably the best model. And when it comes to like technical work, Grok is supposed to be for technical work, and Elon Musk's vision for Grok is to be uncensored and also win the AI race. Current AI that we have, although it is general AI, they're looking for AGI, so that's like the next step. Something to keep in mind is when I was in school, we often talked about the Turing test. The Turing test is very important. We beat the Turing test a while ago. So now we have to come up with new definitions on what does it mean for AI to be as smart as a human. That's just something to keep in mind. Or you can only measure based on your measuring tool, right? So, question? No?
No, no question, sir.
Okay. Oh, still sharing that? Nothing online?
Nothing online.
Okay. So the next slide is, oh, not sharing it. So very quickly, we talked about these models and how many different things there are. I think it's important that we see them run side to side to be able to gauge the type of responses we can expect. So I do want to mention full disclosure, this is my own website. And we'll run a simple prompt. You're an expert research analyst, summarize in 150 words the key technical advantages and ethical risk using open source models like Llama or DeepSeek versus proprietary models like Claude or GPT-4. And we can actually edit this and just say GPTs. And your response with one sentence recommending which type is better. So we can actually, we'll ask this against something like, we'll ask Grok. Huh. Am I not clicking on it? There we go. We can ask Meta. Go with Maverick. And we can ask, what other model should we add? No thoughts? We'll choose Anthropic. So I want to go with a 4.5. So they all write at various lengths. Remember, there's throughput. We said 150 words. I wonder who followed and who didn't, right? There's also different styling differences. And we could sit here and read side by side. What some systems are now doing is you could merge the responses. So you're able to gain insight from multiple different models. But we know realistically that using something like a DeepSeek or a Llama, although it might not be as powerful, you can tune it to your own liking. So we're hoping for that response, right? Let's go ahead and look at the recommendations. For a university research lab, open source models are preferable due to their transparency and customizability, which align with academic values, reducing reproducibility, critical inquiry, providing ethical and safeguards. So that's kind of like your question that we had before. Looks like Llama did not give us a one sentence response in the end. And this is the recommendation. University research labs should prioritize open source models. So same answer again. The reason why this one might not give us such a good response is because this is actually a 7TP model. So it's very small compared to the other ones. The other ones are cloud-based. So I just wanted to show that even though this is small, at times it can miss if you don't prompt it correctly. Any questions on the chat? No? Okay. So it looks like we're still merging semantically. So let's go ahead and refresh that. So final recommendation, should prioritize open source models because they provide the transparency and data governance. Now, let's go ahead and delete these. If you are curious about how different models respond at different sizes, especially if you're trying to see the improvements, you could always compare the Llama models before you download them. So we type something like meta. We can compare a 400 versus a 70. Then versus, say, something you could run on your laptop, like an 8B. So just for reference, the 8B, this should run on most laptops, most computers at home. The 70B, you probably need a gaming computer to be able to run this, or maybe a very beefy MacBook. 400, there's no way you can run this unless you have a small cluster at home. Yeah, or yeah, a Mac Studio. So, and any takers for prompts that we want to compare across these models? No? Any in chat? Conference abstract. Like, what should I write?
On the topic of
Or
source LLM for university research.
and remember, we talked about smaller model, if they're running on the same hardware, it's going to be faster than the big one, right? And that's what we saw right here. It was a very large model, just took a while. And the last one we added was a very small one. Let's see. So the big one says to get research papers published, journals. Okay, so as we could see, it's very yeah, it's too verbose. Although it's probably, and it's still going, by the way. So remember when we said we want to follow those guidelines, right? So this is why you limit them, because if you don't limit, it just keeps on going forever. Remember in my own custom instructions, I said to be very brief. And that's why you want to set these. If not, these larger models have so much knowledge into them that they will just keep on going forever. If we look at the AB model, which is the smallest and was the fastest, I would say it provides you like a decent amount of information, right? So I think this shows a very small case where, yeah, maybe you don't need the largest models to be able to do your work. And keep in mind, this is a raw 8 billion parameter model. If you're trying to do a task, you could always grab these. You could provide it with additional information. You could even partially train it to do your bidding, whatever it might need to do. You might need it to trade stocks or read the news and provide you summaries, right? So anyways, let's go ahead and stop. Right. Yep.
Time or not, someone submitted a prompt online. If you want to try another one, we've got one. If not, we can move on. But I do have a question too.
Yeah. Well,
Like you hear this anecdote of like some of these platforms will like build in, like fake latency on purpose just to like make humans more comfortable.
mm-hmm.
Do you have any of that built into your sandbox page, or is it stripped down of all that?
No, it's stripped down completely.
Okay.
So you'll get the fastest response possible. Our rates. So it runs on a freemium. So it runs on a freemium framework. So how I do this is I provide 300 plus models. There's about 60 free ones. These can be very small ones. Some of these are very large. Some of these are open source, some of them are not. And you'll also have access to the premium models, but on a limited day basis. There's no latency. The backend is optimized so you always get the cheapest rate. So realistically, how the website works is you pay, and then you're able to use the interface completely for free. Your tokens are just allocated towards your own usage. Does that make sense? Yeah. What was the
Yeah, so I apologize. It wasn't in your first workshop, but I read your slides, so I think I'm so if I understand this, because I think one of the biggest critiques of AI is the sort of lack of confidentiality. But let's say I happen to have a very powerful computer in my office that I'm not using. I can download one of these models onto the computer, and anything I'm feeding it to that computer, it could still. Well, I guess my question is, what sorts of tasks can I not do if I'm doing it entirely on my computer?
I would say,
Let's say I'm feeding it PDFs or something as its knowledge base.
so there's two limitations. One, your hardware, and two, your creativity. If you have decent hardware, I would say like majority of MacBooks or just Windows computers with a decent amount of RAM, you are more limited by your creativity rather than by the model itself. So if we think back to that DeepSeek model, right? So DeepSeek V3, it's like 640 or 71 billion parameters. But underneath, I believe it's 128 small models. So if your tasks only require, those, maybe a model that's 8B, like the one we just showed, and did okay, that's really all you need. You could also download these models and tweak them. Remember, we showed a little bit on all the parameters that go in. If you just change those parameters, it's likely that you end up getting better responses. So it's about you taking the model and making it your own. They provide you a basis and you just need to tweak it. Does that answer your question?
If it has all of the information that I need on the computer, can I break the connection to the internet when I run it?
Yep. Yep, you can completely break the connection. These are used on enclave systems usually. So yeah, you can shut the internet off and it won't be able to talk back to anything.
Very cool.
On this note, like, some things are like evergreen projects that don't really need like, up-to-date modern information, but like, as part of your model selection for this task, do I have to worry about like when this model was built and whether it's only going to know about things that happened 2 years ago? For example, am I making sense here?
Oh, yeah. So yeah, that's a very good point. So models do have a training deadline, and they'll only have knowledge based on whatever that deadline was. So it might not have access to current events. So on this case, like say using it to search news and summarize them, you will need to have an internet connection. And it's using that as external data to then feed it. And that's why we have web search enabled. I believe it's off today, so people wouldn't crash the site if too many people were on it once. But everything will be upgraded tonight. If anyone wants to make a free account, it's sandbox-ai.net. We also have access to things like the parameters. So delete these. So remember how we said those GUIs don't allow you to make things reproducible? So my website is built around trying to be user first. And you could actually change everything from temperature all the way down to some things that maybe we don't need to change. Fill it in, choose your model that you want to utilize, and just get to create the profile. This profile is then saved to you, and you can make these specific model endpoints yours completely for reproducibility. And this is going to be an evolving project. I plan to develop not only this reproducibility aspect, but also be able to train, be able to create private databases if you want to use private databases for your models. And who knows, maybe even connecting a bunch of different models together to perform some tasks, right? In a very drag and drop type of way.
One question just came in from the chat.
Yep.
Are you running the 405 billion locally?
No. No, I'm not running it locally. All of these are connected to an AWS server. And that's how we're able to get so many, because some are running on servers, and then there's other cloud-based models, like we saw ChatGPT, we saw Claude, so those connect back to those providers. But it's basically an aggregate where you can choose whatever you want. The reason I came up, or the reasoning for this project was because I use a lot of models and I'm often testing them, and I needed a place where I could just do this. And initially I was doing it on my own computer, but then sometimes I'm not at home and something comes out. So this website is built in a way that when the model is initially released, it automatically updates and aggregates that model. Fun fact, we had GPT-5 like 36 hours before the actual release. We had Grok a couple of days before the release. I found out Meta 4 was coming out because it was added. And then we got the news like 2 hours later. But I was already testing it by then.
Is it available through their like API? Like how do you get access?
So it's not available for API use yet, but I think it will be in the future. We'll also have a capability where if you wanted to upload your own LLM and just post it here and utilize it, share with other people, all these capabilities are being built on.
I think his question was more, how are you getting
Like
the
before.
new models 2 hours?
Oh,
Right.
yeah. So, yeah, there's a small local algorithm that I run, and that's gets like all those endpoints for those websites. And on those, if it detects it, then it creates an action. Remember, we talked about GPT actions. So it just creates an agent action that adds it to the endpoint.
You're faster than their PR departments.
Yeah, basically, because it's automated, and that's the beauty about, computers in general, right? They could do things much quicker, especially if they're repetitive.
I want to clarify this point. So I think we're talking about kind of two different things. This question was about local models, but Sandbox is really strictly not local, right? I mean, you need that's web interface only.
Yeah, it's
That
web interface.
particular is web. Sorry, you can answer the question.
Yeah.
I just want to frame the question correctly. Like, Sandbox is really meant for web compliant tasks.
Hmm.
Talking about the local models, we're really talking about something you would download
Yeah,
and then run truly local on your own hardware.
yeah. So just to make this super clear, this runs on AWS servers. So at the time, it's just as secure as any other like GPT website. If you want to use a local model that's completely safe, like in your case, yes, go on Olama instead, download it to your computer. Don't use this. In the future, we are planning to add policies like PII, PHI compliance, HIPAA compliance for all these models, and also create the actions so you're able to maybe do something like medical scanning online in a completely compliant service.
Clear. I mean, I hope you don't mind me saying. I mean, I've
Yeah.
played with Sandbox for a few months now, and so it is great for like testing these different models and trying to figure out, if you want to run local, and you're trying to figure out what local model you can use given the constraints that you've got in terms of hardware and task and whatever. This is a great first place to start testing these models with things close to your task and figuring out what you need and what, how your how you might choose your trade-offs based on hardware and et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah, and a great thing is that it gives you a side-by-side comparison versus like those expensive models like Claude 4.5. It's the most expensive model, by the way. And comparing it against something they run locally. Are those responses off the bat good enough for you on a local model? And if so, should you invest so you can run this local model, right? Or do you need to stick to the online solution? And that's it's one of the reasons why I launched this. If you do want to run things locally, there's other options. It's later on in the workshop, and I could show the websites and all those details. Are there any other questions?
we're good.
Okay. Go back to the slides.
Wait
Well,
for a break.
oh,
Rush you to say that? Like we're right at Waymark. We're right at 3 p.m. So
that went by pretty quick. How's this? Let's just go over something super quick, which is the next slide. If people are online looking at the slides or have access to it, it's well, I guess I'm sharing it, right? So can't really see it. So there's a couple of benchmarks. There's the MMLU, if you're interested on who has the best general AI. And if you want to keep up to date on what is the best model, then this is something to reference. This is the MMLU. It's basically like SAT for LLMs. The leaderboard benchmarks, shows Claude as number 1. Yep, specifically Opus. So Opus is the, I guess you could call it flagship version, followed by Sonnet. That's like the mid tier. And after that, it's GPT-5 Insight. So, or high now. So on the, let's see, do we have access to it? No, so we don't have access to Pro through here, but we have access to Pro here. So another reason why I built this, I had like 7 different subscriptions, and I was like, I don't really use all of them. So let me go ahead and just have this. But so if you're curious on what is, if I only need 1 license, which one should I get? Opus is the best model for everything. However, we saw that some tasks might not require the most expensive models or the most compute intensive. There's also output token comparisons. There's the cost breakdown. Remember I said Claude is the most expensive. Well, here you have a comparison that's almost double next to Grok thinking. So just be very mindful of this.
Is this like, how does this cost relate back to energy use? Or is this like, yeah, I'm assuming there's some like profit margin in here. You know, Claude might have a bigger margin than the others, but like how much is straight back to like, you know, energy consumption?
So in terms of energy, I'm not sure. There might be another benchmark for this. Also, data centers are like the XAI data center is built in a more efficient manner. It's, I believe, majority, if not all, water cooled. And then Google is very efficient because they created their own hardware architecture to run LLMs. There's also other labs that do techniques and so on. And I mean, if you're talking to foreign countries about how efficient they are, they might gaslight you, you know? So in terms of energy, we can't really know, but we do know as cost breakdown. So how much does it cost a consumer to be able to run these models? And Claude, even though it is the best, it is twice more expensive as the next model. And if we go back to the overall benchmarks, that it's marginally better, right, than the next model. And I think today's day, it's really about finding the tool and the framework that you want to use. What do you feel more comfortable with? Because everything is in the 80s these days, right? Before we had these huge spikes. Now it's everything is pretty leveled. Like I said, I'm still a Claude user because I code, and they have additional coding tools built for this. But I've heard that the Gemini Pro model is actually better and it has wider ranges. And I have a friend who only uses the codecs for ChatGPT, and there are leaderboards that say it's actually better for Claude. I'm just comfortable with Claude, so I stick with it.
Yeah. Graph, it's like
Yeah, like
comfortability. Like, yeah, I see a bunch of ties here, and it's like, you know, that what breaks the tie is the thing I'm
yeah.
using. So
This is like the most entry level. Why? Yes. So it's kind of.
Yeah, and that's one thing that you might want to consider is that if there is a benchmark, we're going to train to beat that benchmark, right? So these might be kind of skewed, but at the end of the day, it's about trying different models and frameworks, products that really fit your own specific workflow. And that's why I stick to Anthropics. And I believe we had a question here.
I mean, just to make sure I understand this, so going back to if I'm just running the model on my own computer that's broken from the internet, the cost to me, if you know, if you were to plot the cost on the previous graph, it would just be like my electricity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just your electricity. And that's actually where MacBooks and other Apple computers on Silicon, we won't go into depth about hardware, but they're extremely efficient when it comes to power.
No, I'm just thinking about like this critique that if you use AI at all, you're using this massive amount of energy. And I think that some of the people who are saying that would not hesitate to run a long R SaaS program on an Office desktop.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's also the cases of like, okay, maybe you shouldn't reply or end your chats with like thank you or wow, that was great, you know, things like that. But in general, I don't think it wastes as much power as we say. I think we should have a priority list on what things are really taking up power that aren't adding benefit to everyone, because Gen AI, I think, adds a huge societal benefit, at least in my opinion. And going back to open source LLMs that you can download, there's actually a
GPT 120B is that right there. This one, yeah, 80.8%.
Yep.
GPT OSS 120B,
Yep, right there.
20B. 120B is a little bit above, yeah, right here.
But yeah, I see it.
Right here.
Yep.
And Mac Studio running that at full blast is using 100 watts. That's it.
Yeah.
100 watts, maybe less than the lights.
Yeah, so
Computer on at night is the worst, right?
so yeah, and those are the peaks too. And that's a free model that you don't have to pay for. So if it's going through like hundreds of tasks, thousands, especially in like a given week, instead of using tokens, you could do it with an open source model locally. Then you probably should. And also, you don't see a huge drop off from the 120 down to the 20B. Yes, it's like roughly 7% drop off in performance, but that you need maybe a Mac Studio that is maybe like
128. 128.
yep, 128. I think it might be throttling if we go that high. Maybe how much would it be, like $6,000 to configure something like that?
3,000.
3,000? Okay. So
350.
versus something like that, like a 20B, I could run that on my Mac Minis, and my Mac Minis have 4 gigs of RAM. They're roughly $800, and I have a cluster of them, so they just all work together.
Year from now, like you can run it on your current desktop that you're not even using anymore instead of throwing it away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I did keep a desktop that's less than 5 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm using it for.
Yeah, so, and if we just want to look at the leaderboards for, there's also open leaderboard. So this one compares just the open source LLMs that you can download on specific tasks. And you can compare them, and like we said, we could see that the 120B GPT OSS is pretty high. So, yep, this is something to reference if you only want to focus on open source LLMs that you can run, engage their performance. I guess with this, we could take a break. So we're halfway through.
Online chat is clear.
Okay.
Got 3:07 local time. What time you want to reconvene?
3:15. Is that okay?
Perfect. Okay, so 8-minute break, and we'll see everybody back here in 8 minutes.